We'll tell you many things that may shock a lot of people. We'll describe the UFO technology. The true physical principle of UFO motion will be revealed for the first time. We'll talk about future types of energy and weapons. Something may seem impossible, but this is the true reality, repeatedly tested, confirmed by experiments, calculations, and equations. We'll tell you about current situation in modern science. We'll talk about things you have never heard. We'll talk about no one has dared to speak yet. When our children go to the college, we assume they will obtain a quality education, and we believe they have. But reality is different. There is one funny mathematically proven fact. If our real world was created as it described by the modern physics equations, it couldn't exist for a second. There would be nothing, no planets, no sun, nothing. Instant collapse of the system, avalanche-like process. It is mathematically proven. Newton derived a remarkable equation, the universal gravitation law. But there is a trick here. The equation was derived empirically. According to this physical equation, an apple would never be able to fall on the ground. According to this equation, apple would be able only to fly away into the deep space. In order the apple still fall on the ground, it is necessary to place the minus in front of the equation. In physical meaning, the magic minus appeared out of nowhere. Literally, this is a trivial manipulation presented in all current schoolbooks. According to this law, it would be impossible for the moon to stay on the orbit. There are no forces to maintain the balance. Any physicist can check it out. To set a single shift and calculate the forces directed increment applied to the moon. But the biggest problem is that minus is not the only fact of lying in sphere of education and fundamental science. Modern physics society is built on fraud and lies. Lies are so great that pseudoscientific nonsense is written in all the students' books all over the world. For the most truthful lies, many of the scientists have been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Physics. The process has been developed like a snowball. In order to substantiate this false minus, without which the apple can't fall on the ground, many branches of science was created to carry out operations with the magic minus. An example is well-known vector algebra. The main idea is the quantity or scalar is an integration of concepts of length, square, weight, etc. In nature it is meter, liter and so on. There is no value in nature which can be negative. There are no negative letters, it's easy to demonstrate. We can indicate any length in the space. For example, this one, but we can't indicate any negative length in space. The final value of any length is zero. There is no any length after zero. It's experimentally proved, but the theorists need the minus really badly. The apple doesn't fall on the ground without it. It would be possible to look into the causes and find the essence, correct the error, but the theorists make it easier. They build the system of plausible lies. Vector algebra deals with the substitution of concepts, number and quality. The substitution of concepts is the situation where the giraffe is called a crocodile. 48 meters is not a number, it's the quantity. And 48 millimeters is not a number, it's also the quantity. Quantity is not a number. Quantities are described by numbers. Here is another example. Can you make something from nothing? Can you take nothing and create nothing? No. Can you take some zeros and create anything from them? If we take one zero and add another zero and add many other zeros, it will be a zero. No matter how many zeros will be added, there will be always only zero. Imagine that there is an infinite number of zeros. In any case, the sum of zeros is always zero. From zero of sheeps, we'll always get zero of lambs. From zero grown grain, we'll get a zero yield. Any sane person can understand that, but not every modern scientist. Some scientists are envisioning that straight line consists of points which have zero diameters. In their imagination, length may consist of nothing. Let's conduct an experiment. Find out what the length consists of. Let's determine experimentally what linear value of 1 meter consists of. Let's divide one segment for 1 meter into consistent parts. The result of experiment is the linear size was successfully divided into any parts and the components have smaller line sizes. Even if we divide the segment of line into very small parts, we cannot get nothings. The result is still the same, but just smaller parts. The conclusion is the linear value, 1 meter, consists of smaller linear values. The linear value doesn't consist of any numbers of imaginary abstractions. It consists of real segment values, which confirmed by the experiment. Let's look at it in another way. Let's try to create a distance. We place a mark in the space and another mark by the meter, and now we got a distance for 1 meter. Let's try to create a length. Let us arrange the points between the marks with zero diameters, like they teach our children in schools. Place 1 million points, then another 1 million points, then another. We can place it all the day and years for eternity. We can't get any length value until we place real objects between control points. 0 and tends to 0 value are different things. The lengths cannot be any type of abstractions like the point with zero diameter. Length cannot be set by any number or digit. The length is defined only by the value. Theories about 0 point are taught in the best universities of the world. Teachers are forced to tell the children in secondary schools about the lines which consist of nothings, points of zero diameters. That's all because these guys trust this nonsense to education system. Next example. There is no any negative forces and it's easy to prove experimentally. We can make any effort, much effort, little effort, but we cannot make a negative effort. We can pull on or push off and it will be always a positive force or repulsion or attraction. But there is no any negative forces in nature. It's experimentally proved. But some academies are in need of negative forces and negative energies. Their theories are inconsistent without those lies, and they employed deception. So, we have a question. Who actually is responsible for stuffing students' heads with this nonsense? There is no alternative answer. Responsibility for the lies bears the Academy of Sciences Physics Department. The Academy directs the development of courses in our main universities. What is the physics department? It's above all people. They are wonderful. Academics like Velikov, Ginzburg, Alferov, the winners including Nobel Prize winners. This is one side of the coin. And there is another side, the result of their collaboration. It is several generations of students have been trained by illiterate textbooks. Number of nonsense in books doesn't decrease but increase. For example, academician Rubakov, expert in cosmology, a wonderful man. He promotes the Big Bang theory, which is a very fashionable theory in spite of its complete groundless. Our universe couldn't be the result of any explosion, it's proven mathematically. Why they borrow all this non-scientific stuff? Scientists who promote a Big Bang in the 21st century are the same science charlatans like in the medieval alchemists extracting gold from the mouse droppings. The current situation in physics is in many ways similar to the Middle Ages. Everywhere is only nonsense. Dark energy, wormholes, these absurd and ridiculous names. Why do they introduce these theories in scientific community if the theories are groundless? Number of crazy theories increases, and academics stimulate this process as much as they can. For example, academician Ginsburg, wonderful man, recommended to young scientists to develop the string theory. The string theory was originally created on the impossible axioms. The theory is based on something in our universe that cannot exist. The product of this theory is false by definition. There are a lot of talks about multidimensional spaces in science. Let's experiment again. Verify how much of geometric dimensions actually our space has. Make some orthogonal movement of the ball. Move straight up and then down. It's a geometric dimension. Move in the direction north-south. This is the second geometrical dimension. Move in the direction of west-east, the third geometric dimension. The result: the ball can be not moved along any additional definite orthogonal axis, no other axis at right angles. All movements of the ball relative displacements correspond to previously identified axes OX, OY, OZ. The conclusion: experiments confirm that in space in which we are has exactly 3 geometric dimensions, not 4, not 8, not much else yet, but it is experimentally confirmed 3 geometrical dimensions. Repeat this experiment over time, after 7 days, 30 days, 365 days, the experimental results remain unchanged. The conclusion: the space is independent geometric entity in visible limits, in any way independent of time. Time cannot be located in any angles to these geometric dimensions, while the physical factor time doesn't add any additional space geometry of dimensions, and time is not a geometric dimension. The idea that time is one more geometric dimension are naive, intellectually unsubstantiated, and the pseudo-scientific speculation. It's advertise of science charlatans. Yes, some of them are academics. They are real charlatans, same as the medieval alchemists. You have seen a real experiment. Change the outcome of results is impossible. You can shout, you can stomp feet, doesn't matter. Our only 3-dimensional real space is proved. All other spaces are unrealistic imaginary spaces, non-existent spaces, weak-minded spaces. Whether who thought them up and what academics like it. In order to justify curves in geometry, it's used trivial substitution of terms. This is when wardrobe called a toilet. Consider an example from the repertoire of contemporary Greek theorists. Ball pen. Let the surface of a sphere is a space, then a line will be a curve, a geodesic, and so on. Stop. In the given approach already has banal nonsense. Falsification flat per volume. It is known that flat object has no volume. Initially, the volume of any flat object is zero, nor any surface of a sphere cannot be a space. By carrying out such trick in the initial axioms, we can get any weak-brained result. But such result, fabricated initially, cannot have either scientific status. It is a good example of pseudo-scientific approach used in modern science. Used methods are anecdotal, indeed like a joke. Tear off 2 legs of cockroach, whistle, cockroach is crawling. Tear off 2 feet, whistle, cockroach is crawling. Tear off the last 2 legs, whistle, cockroach doesn't move, it can't hear. Conclusion: with the loss of 6 foot, cockroach loses hearing. This is certainly a joke. Confused flat with volume, it's not smarter than to confuse legs and ears. Scientists invented tales about curvature of space to cover up their helplessness in dealing with basic tasks. Let the experiment to detect the subspaces. You can check if there is the curvature of space in the nature or not. Check this is not complicated. Fix the real space an object that has a real physical properties, the volume and density. For present purposes, we can use organic object, a pumpkin. The second object using curved rod of a certain diameter and curvature radius. We carry out manipulation of the object number 2 in the direction of object number 1. If the geometric concept of relativity is correct, if the curvature of space really exists, then the end of the rod falls into the subspace. If not true, then the end of the rod falls into a pumpkin, placed in a real three-dimensional space. The results of the experiment: the end of the rod doesn't fit in a subspace, regardless of the pumpkin's specific properties. The result is constant and well-defined. Consequently, we experimentally proved that the theory of relativity with the curve source intellectually unreasonable and the most banal fraud. For understanding the experimental results, you can repeat it. Experienced object number 1, pumpkin, can be replaced on a theoretician head. Curvature of space and subspaces do not exist. We conducted an experiment and proved that the space is three-dimensional. You can tell that the theory of relativity allowed to substantiate various processes, but just check it and it's all fraud. The fact that the theory of relativity was introduced into the world science slowed the global economy by at least 70 years. The only thing that relativity theory allows is opportunity to falsify any plausible results. Any counts or any results will be fake if the theorists lied in the original axioms. There is absolutely no causal relationship between fictional and real with this method. If you received figure 6 by fictional calculation, that doesn't mean that you have 6 fingers on your hand. This doesn't mean that there is any extra finger in the subspace or dark wormhole. It just means that your initial calculation is based on incorrect axioms. You must have causal link between phenomenon and calculation to get number 6. All the course of construction related to deviation of the photon as much as irrelevant to the form of pumpkin seeds in the stomach of a woolly rhino. Exactly, there is no relationship. I used to think that the relativity theory is something very intelligent and transrational. But the union of non-united things is a method of cheaters. You can think of many continua, but they can't have any scientific meaning. For example, the color-temperature continuum. These terms are physically connected, but in reality there is no any physical meaning. For example, you can successfully deal in the city budget and the municipal sewerage system. But if you mix the budget and the municipal sewerage system, nobody will be able to understand this is fiscal sewage continuum. He may try to appear intelligent, but the budget is swept away to sewerage system. This is why brainy people understand it separately. Separately deal with sewerage and budget. Well-known expression, fat, honey, juice and nails. It's like the true meaning of the space-time continuum. Mix fat, then add nails and little juice. Now we got fat nails juice continuum. This is the same continuum as the space-time continuum. Hammered interval isn't possible because of fat. Eating it also impossible since we don't like nails. cannot even throw in the toilet, can clog the drains. But now we can cheerfully rely on its properties. For example, as a result of sliding nail in fat, curved space and energy is released. Any continuum primarily is a tool about scientific fraud. First, tales about line consist of zeros, then tales about flat has volume, then tales about curved space. So this is not physics, it's fantastic botany. Newton's law holds in the universe when two bodies are composed or universe is filled with bodies. At the same time, external influence may be balanced. If we ask our theorists whether it is balanced and who tested it and when, it turns out that nobody and never tested. And the fact that external influence is balanced, their grandmothers told them. It is the level of modern fundamental science. But if we perform the calculation, we'll find that the influence of an unbalanced body and the external influence are associated. If Greek theorists haven't considered this effect, all other academic calculations on gravity are unfounded. Apple may fall to the ground by one of two scenarios. The first scenario, when all bodies in space are attracted, that's why Apple falls. The second scenario, all the bodies in the space are repelled from each other. As a result, we have the same gravitational forces that push the apple to the ground. One result, one formula, no any differences. Even looking at the sky, we even cannot say for sure what scenario is true. What scenario version of the gravity really provided the fall of Apple? We can tell nothing until start performing calculations and experiments. Experiments and calculation shows us that the falling of Apple is possible only by complex repulsion. Apple doesn't fall to the ground under the direct gravitation prescribed in all textbooks. Apple can only fly into the far space by the direct gravity. What does it mean? Once again, there is lie in most textbooks. Lie has educated several generations of students. How can it be? So, this has happened before. First, the Earth was flat in minds of theorists, and we couldn't even explain what is the globe at those days. In response, we heard that the land cannot be round. All of the water would leak away and we would have fallen wrong. Then the Earth was presented in the center of the world. Orbits of the planets have forms of curved loops, and no one wanted to represent the real world. We could hear something like this: science has reached unprecedented heights, or already invented the wheel, or we make sand chronometers. If we ask now, dear theorists, Is everything with your theories okay?
Имеем ли мы антигравитационный
We
двигатель?
will hear many interesting things.
Мы до
Let's
сих
look at the
пор
gravity. Have we
осваиваем
got
эту
anti-gravity
область
engine?
посредством
No.
древней
We are
китайской
still exploring the space by ancient Chinese jet thirst, in fact.
Если расставить все минусы правильно, то находятся ранее
If you
неучтенные
set the minus sign right, we can find previously unreported gravitational factor,
и
a real physical force which causes tides and the comet's tail and so on. But grief theorists are still developing ridiculous non-existent curves instead of consider processes in the real nature.
в природе искривлениях.
Suppose the Earth falls to the Sun on the straight line.
Падает на
The
Солнце.
Earth
Земля
is in
находится
free fall, no gravity, and the ocean takes form of the proper sphere.
принимает форму правильной сферы. Чем
But what is the
отличается
difference between body at the orbit and body in a state of weightlessness? There is no difference. The point of the fall goes to the side.
падение уходит
So there are no ocean
Раз
tides.
тело буквально вне весомости и сил нет, то какие могут быть приливы?
If the body is in the state of weightlessness and no
Не
forces.
может быть. Но в природе мы их наблюдаем.
According to the direct gravity, no.
Природного явления реальных приливов не сходятся с современной физикой.
We have no rights to use sun force in a second time,
Силу от Солнца приложить к телу второй раз
and we
не
don't
может
have the
никто.
right to use moon force in a second time. So, if there is no forces, there are no ocean flows.
То и прилив в физическом смысле
Tide height is greater than estimated height.
то прилив обеспечит
It is recognized by the official signs.
она обеспечила тяготение. Если рассматривать версию
The rejection of the complex in the longitudinal and transverse directions is different because of correct complex version of the gravity. The diffused area and the force impact is lower in the longitudinal direction.
вода поднимается на планете как раз с
Water rises from both sides,
стороны меньше.
more from one side, less from another. It is completely the same with the observations.
Если
If we forget all this stupidity, if we follow unreliable scientific evidence, the space is endless. It is infinite in all directions. The space is uniformly filled with galaxies at the macro level.
пространство на макроуровне
There is no end of space, no edge of the universe. The universe wasn't created by the Big Bang.
Вселенная не возникала в результате
The space isn't curved.
больших взрывов.
Not curved neither here, nor there, nor anywhere else.
Является ни здесь, ни там.
The universe was always and everywhere.
Всегда и везде.
This is a mathematically rigorous proven fact. Now the good news. If we correct this pseudo-scientific nonsense in physics, the result will be a theory that has no limits of applicability. The theory which already makes possible to gain access to most powerful new energy source. The energy will cover all the needs of humanity. The energy that is much more powerful than anything available today, including nuclear energy. This energy is available today. Besides, this is clean energy. It is almost free energy. What kind is this energy? We talk about the gravitational energy, about the tension of the gravitational field. Analyzing the gravitational field tension according to well-known concepts of Newton, we conclude the tension increases approaching the bodies which have a mass. The larger mass, the more tension. Well, this is main point of view in science, but it is one-sided and naive. Fundamentally, we must see minimum of two independent terms. Locally gravitational tension produced by the body itself and basic gravitational tension, defined set of bodies.
Является комплексом
There is only one possible option for the basic tension. The basic gravitational tension of fields at any point in space is constant, and it doesn't depend on approximations to the weight of body. The tension value of the base gravitational field is the maximum possible at the same time. So there is a gravity tension anywhere near you more than near the Sun. It's the current concept. And if we compare the partial gravity of the Earth and the real gravity of the base field, the differences are huge. Values with obscene number of zeros. If we represent it graphically by the roulette, the distinction is comparable like kilometers and an indiscernible of a millimeter. At the graph, the Earth tension is shown by a parts of millimeter, and the whole universe tension is shown by miles. It's happened because of gravitation fields are overlaying each other, and the gravity interaction is not limited by the distance, it is not only decrease. The number of objects, mass, which are involved in the interaction increases because of the field expansion. Then the overlaying of fields at each other aligns the value of the gravity tension. This is a field which has an extremely high potential at any point in space. It is available and we can use it today. Some scientists argue that we can't understand the UFO principle. They say that it's physically impossible. Any living organism will not stand congestion in UFO spacecraft, and it will not survive. Similar view was voiced by respected academician Velichev. Let's see a real situation. Suppose we place a person on a certain platform and then apply an effort to that platform. The platform begins to move, the internal forces restrain the person. Now let's see at the gravitational field. The gravitational influence spreads at all bodies which have mass. It spreads at the platform and at the located on each person. The same force which is attached to the platform is applied to each point, to each human cell. And if the platform will move in any direction because of the simulated gravitational field influence, the person will start to move to the same direction. And the person will not be subjected to any overloading. He will not even fall that the platform began to move. The same situation is with moving upright and in any other directions. When you move this platform up, person will not be pressed into the platform. It is possible to create a real physical system which will move in space almost at any speed in any directions until instant stop, and the person will not be exposed to any accelerations in such device. Besides, the gravity cutoff in the physical meaning is a deep structural impact on time. The practical access to technology of impact on time is an enclosed contour. This is a naive point of view in current physics that movement back in time are theoretically possible. In fact, time travel is possible only forward to the future. It is impossible to get back from the future. The reverse moment in time is different. We consider both possibilities. Example number 1. If you are in contour inside which the time is slowed down, for example 1 to 1000 minutes, having lived in this contour for a minute and came out of it, you'll find yourself in the future, 1000 minutes from the reference point. Example number 2. You are in contour inside which the time is going faster, for example 1000 to 1 minutes. Having lived in this contour 1000 minutes, you came out of it after 1 minute from the reference point. These examples clearly show that there are two possibilities for moving through time, but it is impossible to go back in time.
не позволяет вернуться в прошлое. Путешествие в прошлое невозможно в принципе. Но это при наличии...
If we have such device, nothing prevents us to collect launch warheads within 2 months in slow time, having real flying time half an hour. And this technology is possible today. What this technology means in practice?
Сверхтехнология означает на практике.
First of all, this is a technical device moving 1/2 of speed light, and without any overloading.
Вторая скорость света
No current technology can compete with these or similar devices.
для пилота.
Most advanced aviation technologies are out of the competition and unreachable.
Конкурировать с подобными устройствами. Самая современная
Imagine that battle with usual modern jets flying with sound speed in which pilots are overstretched in the maneuvers,
авиатуром с одной стороны,
and aircrafts in which there is no overloads and almost no limit of speed.
которых получают перегрузки.
No real resistance in this situation.
Летательные аппараты, в которых
Such speeds are unnecessary in the near-Earth space. Explore deep space with such speed
говорить не приходится.
will be
В рамках
reasonable.
околоземного пространства такие скорости излишни. С такими скоростями разумнее осваивать дальний космос.
The second detail is gravity shield.
Гравитационный щит.
We don't have to care about aerodynamics of these devices. The aerodynamic of device and everything inside depends of force field shape.
Из силового поля
There is no limits on the environment.
всего того, что это поле тащит вместе
We'll even not be able to see the burning while entering the atmosphere. The gravity field has no hard frame which would provide friction.
не имеет
Ships with success can be moved in both the atmosphere and in vacuum and underwater. In one case, it is surrounded by a field of air, in the second, from water.
капсула из воздуха, а в другом капсула из воды.
The frame acts like a ram in the same time. Formally, there is even no limit on the movement in solid substances. It may sound fantastic. The ship covering will not be damaged. It will not contact with the environment.
Со средой. Кроме того, сбить
It is impossible to shoot down the ship. Any warhead will be absorbing by the field without mechanical effect.
капсула. По сути, вязкая стена.
And the characteristics of the field are so that to break it mechanically impossible in principle. Suppose that cannonball object get close to the ship at high speed in a collision course. A collision is imminent.
На большой скорости
The object begins to feel an increasing influence of directed towards gravitational forces. The force increases in inverse proportion to the square of the distance, and the object gets stuck in the field and slips away.
вязнет в капсуле,
The ship and everything inside cannot even feel its external action, because it's not field generated by the vehicle, but the field generated by all the bodies in the universe. Any external object get closer to the ship will contact with external field of ship.
именно комплексом небесных тел.
And this power is almost unbelievable.
Любое внешнее тело
And in terms of energy, it is an inexhaustible source.
Причем в
As a result, we lose no energy. As a result, we slightly slow the expansion of the observable universe and slow down to the smallest value. It is an inexhaustible source of energy. With this energy resource, we can carry out anything. We can move the continents, move planets. We can provide all the energy we need. Why is it available now? Because we know all about this field. There are two developing ways. If we publish all information, every nation will be able to implement the project almost for several years. If we develop it in our state, we'll have an anticipation of 80 or 300 years. These are serious numbers. We can become the richest state in a short time, with a full technological advance. By the way, objects moving by this principle are named by scientists an UFO. Some scientists react of this physics fact such way. Never mind, it cannot be. However, these facts have quite explainable physical nature. And no matter we believe in the existence of UFOs or we don't. The idea of such movement in space is achievable physically and technically today. We can already make such technical devices. We have full comprehensive theoretical framework. You only need to overcome prolonged academic dementia at all levels. If we place such technical devices in the space and start to affect on basic universal gravitational field, all bodies in the space will be affected. No matter how great the body mass is, it will move in the direction we need, and the number of masses is not determinative in this system. The work is performed by a slightly changed basic universal field, not our private field. If we deploy a similar field near Mercury, Mercury will move in the required direction. If we deploy this field near Saturn, Saturn begins to move. And this is today's reality. It is technically possible at all stages, construction of devices and any further actions. We can take away any asteroids off the Earth, and we don't need to blow up anything. We can exclusively use these technologies. But we can publish it and present it to humanity. But in this case, Russia will be deprived of competitive advantages. And besides, arms race, which history has never known, is already running. What is the gravitational device? The required efficiency of the gravitational device to overcome Earth gravity must be more than 1 or 100%, and as follows: to come off the Earth, we must to overcome Earth gravity. We must create a device that affects the gravitational spectrum or gravity. That is, if we stand on the platform which limited attraction, the effectiveness of this limit should be at least 100%. We do not get a vector for coming off the Earth. We can only get zero gravity, equilibrium force, reaching 100% efficiency. To come off, we need more effort. Practice shows that 100% efficiency is unachievable. But it goes another way in real physics. Potential of base gravity field is constant. This is the required efficiency of gravitational device. Indicator which show the necessary degree or measure of usage in percent of physical phenomenon to achieve result is calculated like efficiency required in percent ratio of Earth mass to the mass of largest known object observed or bodies that are theoretically possible. The required effectiveness is a small share of 1%. Everything you hear is confirmed by experiments and mathematical calculations. We have full evidence base, provided materials are defeat for the physics. No one academician can tell something intelligible on these facts, because it is going as we have described. The truth is on our side, the verification is obtained. There is no direct gravity, no dark matter, no dark energy. There was no any Big Bang ever. The spatial concept of the theory of relativity is untenable. Vector algebra has only one eye. There was no quantum theory of gravity and will never be. Theory of time? No. Unified field theory? No. Well, what do we have? We have physics from Hans Christian Andersen. Suppose you're a baker and you bake bread in the 11th century. No matter what plus or minus and what forces are directed. But if scientists will place these signs correctly, then bread will be baked on electricity, not on fire. This happened with electricity theory. Pluses and minuses were placed correctly, so we have what we have. Pluses and minuses are failed to place in the theory of gravity. As a result, there is no any anti-gravity or other devices. Because of this fail, all gravity, it seems weird, like an electricity seemed unattainable for bakers in the 11th century. If you are a modern baker and you let your children to a physical university, it will break their brains. They will cease to understand that force is always positive. They will cease to understand a lot of important things. And all because of one sign minus. They disfigure half of the physics. Modern scientists doesn't understand quite simple things. You can't make even tides to fly apart by the inside attractive forces, and any orbit couldn't be formed by the Big Bang version. And it will be not any kind of orbital movement if forces do not return the body to the orbit. Your son will come back from a modern university with a broken brain and will be telling nonsense. The same as in the 11th century, like the Earth is flat and is in the center of the universe. Today's students really believe that if you look into the distance with a very powerful device, you can see back of your head, because the space is indeed curved. And now about the bureaucratic system. It turns out that the development is easier to sell abroad than to implement in the country. Our bureaucratic superstructure in science and education doesn't catch mice. Development carried out in Russia. Russia may have a monopoly of these technologies, but officials are not even able to implement full scientific examination of this area of physics. There is no expert in this area in the physical branch of Rus. There is no one in official science competent to even understand what actually happens. The situation is absurd. Russian Federation government provides funding for research and development of super technologies, but everything is available a long time ago, but the documents are traveling in the bureaucratic desks. Let's suppose that the thinking activity of science officials not allow them to understand what is happening, so strategic works may go abroad. Suppose it will put into practice in another country. For example, Iran. Its overwhelming weapon superiority, its overwhelming energy and economic superiority. This is unprecedented scope of expansion influence. The scenario that the Earth will be called the Great Islamic Persia Planet is not excluded. And it's not such a fantastic. What kind of benefits we speak about? Using a fundamentally new energy resource without any material value in terms of modern market economy. The second is almost complete lack of costs for production and delivery of energy supply to energy-producing device. The third is lack of practical and technical limitations of the amount of produced energy. The fourth is the ability to create highly compact, extremely huge power plants, many times larger than the nuclear energy or other types. And the last, reducing the cost of necessary expenses tens or hundreds of times, ability to monopolization of the high-tech sectors of the market, energy market, space transport, weapons, etc. We told you a small part of information. Part of the information about project is available online in web, calculations, formulas and experiments. In fact, everything is much more interesting than you can think. Yours, Viktor Katyushik. Look for our publications.